live and online. It's Sleepless with Steve and the Movie Book Club with your host, Steve Pulaski.
Back and better than ever, Sleepless with Steve. It's live on YouTube on a Wednesday evening, a rainy Wednesday evening should you live in the Midwest. We're getting everything but warmth out here, and if we do, it's warmth with a hefty, hefty price. We come to you live and in living color every Wednesday evening, 6:30 Central Time. And we would be reviewing Everything Everywhere All at Once tonight. We would be doing that. But somebody lives in an area where they don't show that movie, at least on opening weekend. They would rather prioritize such movies as The Batman or The Lost City on multiple screens. And that somebody is me. I held up the show this week. And I am just as pissed as anybody because you know how hard it is? It's like landmines. Since I got all nerds on my Facebook page and my Twitter page, trying to avoid spoilers for this thing is like kind of a tricky task. I find this even more difficult than the average Marvel movie. Like, man, oh, shove. At least like film nerds are a little bit more respectful on that. But I'm going to see it on Saturday, I think. I'm going to see Father Stew tomorrow night. We'll see how that goes. Have you guys seen anything about that movie or read anything about that movie, Father Stew, that new Mark Wahlberg movie?
I just saw a image on Twitter that's Mark Wahlberg saying, "And let us pray for our fellow," and I went, okay, no way. This is a real movie.
It is Mark Wahlberg's foray into Christian, like, filmmaking, Christian cinema, quite honestly, because he said that he wants to get into, like, making more morally conscious movies, and that's what this is. That's what this is. And it also, too, what better way to get into this space than to have Mel Gibson as your co-star? And also, it is directed by Mel Gibson's longtime girlfriend.
I did not know about that. Okay.
This thing is a friggin' doozy. I cannot wait to review this movie. I can't believe it. It's coming, and it's R-rated, like a hard R-rated Christian movie, too. So I was just curious if I'm dreaming this or if this thing is actually coming out.
All I know is that any chance to work with Mark Wahlberg, or sorry, not Mark Wahlberg, Mel Gibson, I think any actor is jumping on that train while he's, in his revival era, his revival arc. So you know what? I respect that, regardless of whatever happens with this movie. Dude, really? He went from Boogie Nights to Father Stew. Okay. All right.
Yeah, I swear. And it's like a hard R-rated movie. I read one review of it yesterday.
I'll respect it. Hey, if it winds up being like Dennis Quaid's Christian film career, I'll respect it.
Yeah, Dennis Quaid has honestly been like a stalwart in a lot of these movies. But anyway, that's a conversation for another day. Happy Easter if you choose to celebrate it. This is Sleepless with Steve. We'll get back on track here because we got three lofty topics here. Since we're not reviewing Everything Everywhere All at Once, we'll review a movie by the director who likes to throw everything at you everywhere all at once instead, because Michael Bay has a new movie in theaters, and judging by the box office receipts, you probably didn't see it this weekend, but we did, in Ambulance. So we will review that, and it's funny now, and I've kind of been like the spoiler over here. I don't know how much. I think you guys probably try not to pay attention for more reasons than just this. But like I generally watch these movies on the weekend, and then I publish my review, which is on Facebook. But we don't talk about these movies before we go into the podcast. Well, now Joe made the decision to create a letterbox to follow me. So I got you, brother. I know the direction. I try not to look. I just stumbled upon it. I try not to look. I just stumbled upon it. It's great to have you on Letterboxd. Dom has a fiance and a mortgage, so I don't think he's getting on Letterboxd anytime soon. But
the minute you started talking about that, I'm like, shit, he must have saw my review on Letterboxd.
So I am very curious to see where this is going to go today. I am super, super curious where this is going to go today. But we come at you live, and we are going to start in memoriam, though, kind of taking it down a notch, too. But we will start in memoriam because this is some sad news to see yesterday. Man, oh, shove. In the last, I'm trying to remember when Louis Anderson died. It was almost a year ago, if not a year ago, or even longer, maybe. But, think about the comics we've lost recently. Louis Anderson, Norm Macdonald, Bob Saget, and now Gilbert Gottfried. All in like a kind of a whirlwind. Like I really feel for a lot of these comedians, who are friends with these, because these are high profile guys that a lot of people knew. But Gilbert Gottfried, legendary blue comedian, I guess you could say, that was kind of his style. He passed away yesterday after a long illness at the age of 67. And it's really sad news, to say the very least. He was a guy that was in a ton of different things. It's funny because if you look at his career, he was in Aladdin. He was the voice of the parrot Lago in Aladdin. And he was Digit in Cyber Chase, which is how I think a lot of us 90s kids know him, or at least recognize him. He was the Aflac Duck. But he got first things first, he got typecast as a bird because of his voice, which I think is hilarious. But he also, though, he was a filthy comic. He was absurd. He went on constant tangents during his jokes. He was known for that exaggerated, deliberately annoying cadence, his voice that he would always amplify. But he was also just known for a lot of his just a variety of filmography. He was in the Lemony Snicket movie. He was in Problem Child. I think he was in all 3 Problem Child movies. He was in a lot of different things. I think his first big break had to be Beverly Hills Cop 2. I think that was kind of where a lot of people discovered him and stuff. But before I throw it over to Dom, I just want to say too, and I'm going to go into this more in my review. I just watched 15, 20 minutes ago. I just finished watching the documentary Gilbert. I was telling you boys about it in the green room. And it's free to watch, excitingly speaking. It's free to watch on Canopy. That's the library streaming app. It's free to watch on Canopy. It's free to watch on Pluto TV. It's free to watch on, I think, Tubi. I know it's on Peacock. I think it's on Tubi. It's on a lot of these different free streaming sites that at most you need an account. I wouldn't make time for this. It's only an hour and 38 minutes. It goes by very quickly. You get a rare peek into Gilbert Gottfried, because it wasn't until he passed yesterday that I realized, I don't know a lot about the guy. I had to look up. I didn't know he was married with kids. I did not know that. And this documentary shows you a lot about him. One of my favorite things about him, and you think it's kind of like a one-off thing, he was so cheap. He was so cheap. He would take the bus to travel, like the Greyhound bus to travel to shows. And the first thing he does at every hotel room, one of his people say, he says the first thing Gilbert does at all these hotels is he goes to the front desk and he asks for toothpaste, a toothbrush, a comb, and if he's lucky, deodorant. And then the next scene in the documentary is his wife pulling out, underneath the bed, these bins. I kid you not, 4 huge moving sized bins full of hotel toiletries. This guy's a freaking gem. And then there's another bit in it, and that's the last thing I'll say. There's another bit where he talks about he's showing he's packing his bags and stuff, and he brings a crate of DVDs. This is 2016, mind you, too. He brings a crate of DVDs from his stand-up specials, and he goes, this is my merch. He goes, and he says it so awkwardly. He goes, all comedians are supposed to have merch. So this is my merch. And then it cuts to Jeff Ross, and Jeff Ross goes, who the hell in this day and age brings DVDs as merch to a stand-up special? Not to mention nobody owns a goddamn DVD player anymore. And you just learn so much about Gilbert, and you see his warmth. They interview his sisters. His sisters are a big part of this movie. His mother, his late father are a huge part of this. His wife, who I couldn't point out in a lineup before watching this documentary, is so sweet. He leaves behind a lot of good stuff. And I think that this is sad to say, but I think people have done a lot of Googling and YouTubing to see how much he's really done over his multiple decade-long career. So it's a big loss in the comedy world. Dom, what say you about Gilbert Gottfried?
Gilbert Gottfried was the kind of person that you mention him to someone, you mention that name to someone, and they'll give you a different answer. You know, every single person will give you a different answer each time. Oh yeah, he's the guy. He's Iago the parrot from Aladdin. That's probably going to be the most common one. It goes to show actually how much in the mainstream he wasn't, because when he passed away, it's like Aladdin star Gilbert Gottfried passes away. It's like, God damn, really? They had to go that far back for like his most mainstream thing. But for other people, it might be that one College Humor sketch where he reads 50 Shades of Grey a little bit. You might remember him, like Steve mentioned, from various animated things. Apparently, he was in Lego Batman or Lego DC Supervillains in those video games as well. So if you're younger, you might be more familiar with that. Apparently, he's listed as being in Kingdom Hearts. I don't know if that's just archival footage or if they actually brought Gilbert Gottfried into the Square Enix studios to voice new lines as Iago the Parrot, which would be totally hype. But for the people in the comedy world, of which I'm not, but I'm reading about, he was absolutely a legend. There's the cliche, the comedian's comedian, but it's very much true. He was a staple, or maybe not a staple, but a beloved guest of the Howard Stern show for over 20 years. There's a very popular clip on YouTube where it's him not in his famous voice. So yeah, however Gilbert Gottfried, it's likely going to be a little bit different, or a lot of different from depending on who you are or where you just really heard it for the first time. I think I every now and then I like to subscribe to the notion that there are only a few moments in life that define you, that truly define you. And for Gilbert Gottfried, at least in the mainstream, it absolutely was his 9/11 joke during the roast of Hugh Hefner, the Friars Club, not the Comedy Central roast. This is the Friars Club. If you don't know what the Friars Club roast is, look it up on Wikipedia and then spend hours on a rabbit hole and on YouTube, because those are the original roasts going all the way back to the 50s. Maybe not original, but it's one of the longest. It's a tradition in the entertainment world. It's old Hollywood shit, man. I think Dean Martin was getting roasted at one point. But anyway, during the roast of Hugh Hefner, actually, you know what? He made a joke about 9/11 literally 2.5 weeks after actual 9/11. Like, they were still pulling out fresh bones out of the pile. Like the FDNY was still pulling out their brothers out of the pile when he made that joke. And when you watch that joke, I don't think there was a YouTube clip that showed it back to back, but there's one clip where he says the joke and then you hear the audience very audibly go, whoa, no, ooh, too soon, whoa, no. And then I think it's in another clip or various other clips to kind of save himself from that, or he just goes for broke. The balls on this guy, Gilbert Gottfried, my God. He launches into a 10-minute version of his rendition of the Aristocrats joke, where if you don't know the Aristocrats joke, Joe, go ahead and play it. Get the clip, right? Go ahead and play the Aristocrats. We're going to show it here live on Sleepless. No, I'm kidding. Don't play it. Do not play it.
I was like,
I was going to say I was not briefed by this, but I wholeheartedly support it.
I'm like, yeah, sure, man, sure.
Let me say this. I'm not going to explain the Aristocrats joke. Just look up a YouTube thing on it. There's literally a documentary.
This is what kind of launched it into the mainstream, because it was mainly like a backroom joke.
It's a backroom joke. So here's the thing. Essentially, and I'm assuming you've already looked it up or you will look it up. The Aristocrats, the joke isn't in the punchline, because everyone literally, the joke is literally the Aristocrats. That's the joke. The true test of skill, it's like a rite of passage for many comedians, at least it was in the old comedian world, is your delivery of it, because it's impromptu. And what it is that you just go into them, literally the most vulgar, outrageous, literally the worst thing you can think of. Dead baby jokes, necrophilia, all that shit. Just the worst thing you can think of, and it's in your delivery. And if you know Gilbert Gottfried's voice, that voice going on for 10 minutes about incest, murder, suicide in this like so off color joke. It's just a black void of like devoid of color altogether.
Penn and Teller made a documentary on it too, which I still need to see and probably will watch.
I want to watch
soon.
it. I want to watch it as well.
AMC refused to show it, which is hilarious. AMC refused to show it, and I just always remember this. For some reason when that movie came out. AMC refused to show it, and they claimed that it was because it was about appeal. And Penn and Teller made it, and Penn Jillette famously said in an interview, "Come on, it's not like we're calling it Love Bug 2. Herbie takes it up the ass."
I read that too. It's so good. Man, Gilbert Gottfried, just what a freaking legend. And people who study 9/11 and like 9/11 in media and like historically what that means, that particular those legendary 10 minutes was apparently an extremely early example of 9/11 humor. 9/11 how we talk about 9/11, because it literally happened 2.5 weeks after that. And just the fact that Gilbert Gottfried launched into that rant, it was supposedly, we haven't watched the documentary, but supposedly it was very cathartic for everyone, for the audience, even if they didn't even know the joke. It was cathartic for apparently New York, or at least that particular circle of comedians, New York comedians. And it really was something else. So the absurdity that one of Gilbert Gottfried's most defining moments in his life is that joke. Is true. What a claim to fame, man. Like, talk about like being in the annals of comedy history. I can't think of a higher honor than that.
Joe, what say you?
I don't have much to add on to what you guys are saying. You guys know a lot more about Gilbert Gottfried than I ever did. I mean, like, literally, like, how I was introduced to him was through Aladdin. And, of course, one of my favorite college humor sketches is, when he reads the 50 Shades of Grey chapters with his amazing, beautiful voice.
The way he says clitoris is so good.
I've seen him on like Comedy Central roasts. I think I saw him on one of those. I've seen one of his stand-ups, and I've always heard his voice here and there. Again, Digit is another one as well.
That show's still going too.
It is, yeah.
Cyber Chase.
What?
Yeah, it's still going.
20 years strong. I gotta tune in for when they kill Digit off.
The reason why I know about
Gilbert
that
would have laughed at that joke.
The reason why I know about that too is because I went to go look up what his last role was, because I did watch the Adult Swim show Smiling Friends where he voiced God on there. And I was like, oh man, if that's his last role, that's amazing. And I saw, no, his last role is still Digit. I'm like, man, that's even fucking better. Digit over God.
I did not know. I thought that was like for only a couple years. I misread that number completely. Literally a 20-year gig.
Yeah.
Holy crap.
That show is sneakily still going. I remember looking it up a few years ago and was shocked because I thought it ran for like maybe 6-7 seasons. That is one of PBS's flagship shows.
Well, that's PBS that's publicly funded media, educational media longevity right there. You ain't gonna get the short end of the stick if you land a good gig there.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, sorry, I forgot I was the one that was talking. I mean, I have really nothing much else to add to what you guys are saying. It sucks to see someone 67 go. Again, I think that's very young. We cover a lot of people who have passed away just in this year alone. And yeah, 67 once again. I mean, like, to me, once you hit 80, it's like, hey, you live a fulfilled life. I mean, if you can keep going, better. But like, man, 67, it's like, no, you still have plenty of time to like do something. I mean, like, look how much roles he was still doing. I mean, a 20-year gig with a PBS show and still making jokes and stuff. Like, his last Instagram post, of course, was about the Will Smith slap. So the guy was staying up to date on current events and putting his humor out there still to this day. So it sucks that we lost another legend, just like Bob Saget. But man, may he rest in peace, and my condolences to the family.
And again, just proving the fact how private he was. And like I said, watching this documentary today really showed me how private of a guy he was. He passed away from ventricular tachycardia, and it was complicated by type 2 myotonic dystrophy. And I couldn't tell you much about either of those two things, but I do know tachycardia is generally like a fast heart rate, like not a regular, but quick. Like it's a quick heart rate. And that's what happens when you grow up being raised by a nurse. You learn a lot of like very strange medical terms that are repeated over the years. But rest in peace to Gilbert Gottfried. Like I said, I highly encourage you to watch that documentary. I'll be reviewing it tonight after the show on my website, stevepulaski.com. But we will move on because I know Joe is chomping at the bit at the very least to talk about this movie. And I have to reiterate this. I've expressed this opinion a handful of times, and I think I might have even done it when we were ending the show last week. But, you know, it's Hollywood is as a whole is in a really bad way when I look forward to a Michael Bay movie, because at least its vision is confined to a singular movie. It's not trying to set up a franchise. It's not trying to set up a world, a universe. It is a singular entity. And I've opined, and really looking back, I haven't seen a Michael Bay movie in quite some time. I didn't watch Six Underground, which was on Netflix. I didn't watch that.
It sucks.
But that's what I've heard. So I stayed away from that one. The last Michael Bay movie I watched was 13 Hours. It's probably the last one many people watch, because I don't think Transformers The Last Night did like as well, or at least it didn't seem to, because it didn't seem to have much buzz around it or much hype. I'm not sure, but it's been years since I've seen, a Michael Bay movie. And I know he's made a couple, including those two I just mentioned, but I've opined that Michael Bay really hit his stride. Like Pain and Gain, I still think is his best movie. I still think Pain and Gain is his best, like all around movie, where his style really fits. He didn't do Bad Boys for Life. I think a lot of people assume he did that one, but he didn't.
I thought so too, but
he didn't do that one. But this is his first sort of original movie, like I said, on the big screen in a while, at least since 13 Hours in 2016. And this movie, I mean, I knew it going into it, but even I was kind of surprised. This movie is friggin' bayhem. Like, it really is. This movie is absolutely nuts. And I've seen a lot of movies. I felt like I needed an Advil and a nap coming out of this thing. Like, this thing is not a hangover cure. It's 2 hours and 16 minutes, I believe. It feels every bit as long as that, just because there's so much that happens, and you almost need like a 20-minute hyper stylized jump cutty YouTube video to explain a point A to B chronological order of what exactly the hell happened throughout this thing. Having said all of that, I did not hate this movie. I quite enjoyed this movie. But people have asked me my opinion on it, like recently, like at work and stuff. And I've said the same thing. It's as exhilarating as it is exhausting, because this thing is exhausting. The basic premise, it's kind of ripped from a 2005 Danish movie. But the basic gist of it is about two bank robbing brothers looking to get $32 million in cash. And the setup sort of comes when Yahya Abdul-Mateen II, who you remember from Canyon Man, he's a jobless war veteran. And he goes to his brother, Danny, played by Jake Gyllenhaal. FYI, Jake Gyllenhaal's Danny, his family took Will in as a boy into his crime family, and that's why they're considered brothers. Now that we got that out of the way. Essentially, though, Danny is still like his father and runs this crime ring, and they go and they rob this bank. And typically, as anybody but Danny could have foreseen, it seems, the robbery goes awry because so much happens in the moment. A cop gets shot, and essentially Will and Danny wind up hijacking an ambulance that has the cop that they shot on board fighting for his life, and a paramedic played by Isa Gonzalez from the movie I Care a Lot. She's an EMT. So they essentially take these two people hostage, and they're driving all over LA for about a good hour and 45 minutes, I'd like to say, in what has got to be the most expensive. Like, if this actually happened, there's no way it would, but it's got to be the most expensive car or damage caused by a robbery in human history, as fun as it is to watch. The last thing I'll say, just for generalities, I'll throw it over to you, Joe. is that, let me say too, this is kind of apropos of nothing, but if this movie really cost $40 million, as has been reported by multiple outlets, that's nothing short of goddamn impressive.
Oh, hell
that
yeah.
This thing cost $40 million. I didn't know that until I was writing my review at the end of it, or writing my review when I got home. I was just ballparking like 110 million, like, which is considered, I guess, medium budget by today's standards. I was thinking like 100 million. When I saw $40 million, if that was the actual budget, this thing looks great. And like the amount of stuff that they had to do, I don't know what they were doing, man. They were operating on an Aldi's budget, and they made a really well orchestrated action movie in a lot of respects. So I have to respect that. Joe, what say you about Ambulance?
Man, I don't even know where to start with this. Let me give you like my background with Bay. He made a film I loved growing up as a kid called Bad Boys, and I loved watching it. I loved watching The Rock. I loved watching Bad Boys 2, even though now upon rewatching I don't like it as much anymore. Michael Bay to me has been this action director. He's either hit or miss. I actually like the first Transformers movie. I think the rest of them are kind of dog. You know what's going to follow after that. I think The Island is actually an interesting movie. Pain and Gain, I also agree, is probably his best movie. 13 Hours was a good war film, but then he made Six Underground and Transformers The Last Night right after, and I went, well, so be it. I guess he's done doing creative stuff like 13 Hours and Pain and Gain. So when I saw the trailer for Ambulance, I was like, all right, here we go, typical Schlock Bay. Let's get this over with. Man, I might be in the minority here. I fucking love this movie. I had a blast watching this movie, man. I mean, it is... There are two sides to me when I see a movie like this. There is the side that I will view it as like someone for the show, and it's like, okay, let me view it as, you know, a critic. Let me actually dissect it and everything. Let me take it apart, see what it actually holds as entertainment to a general audience. And then there's me who just knows how Michael Bay works and just feels like, man, if he could just find that perfect middle ground between his insanity side of himself and the grounded side of himself, where he wants to tell a story like Pain and Gain, 13 Hours, or even Bad Boys to that extent, and not something like the Transformer later films and Six Underground. If you could find a middle ground, that would be perfect. And that's what Ambulance to me is. Because I was actually really impressed by this. I'm not even gonna lie. I was like, man, Michael Bay, not only did you make like an exhilarating action film, as Steve says. I mean, it is exhausting. I will say that. I also agree with Steve's statement on that. But man, I was on the edge of my seat for almost like 90% of this movie because I was like, man, what the hell are they going to do next? They perform a live surgery over Skype with other doctors. And let me tell you, where that scene goes, I did not expect it to happen. And it actually made me scream in the theater. Oh! There's some great action scenes. Jake Gyllenhaal is acting his ass off. He's delivering the most stupidest lines Michael Bay has ever written. Probably the best way possible. I'm pretty sure he had a line about that, like, life is tough sometimes. I have herpes. And I was just like, I don't know if that was a real line or not, because this movie is moving at breakneck speed that I can barely digest what is happening sometimes. And that might sound like a bad thing, but honestly, it's like, for some reason, this is like Michael Bay's best paced film for me compared to some of his other ones where I feel like, man, this is just getting way too long for me. For some reason, this film, even though it takes place in an ambulance throughout the entire, like, second, third act, I was like, wow, this is just perfectly paced for me for some reason. There's a lot of crazy stuff happening. Like, the detective here, the lead, like, FBI guy has, like, the biggest dog I've ever seen in film history in his car. And that's like a joke in and of itself and keeps being brought up throughout the film. Like, I sound like I'm going insane describing this movie because the movie is insane in and of itself. I'm even surprised too. It's like I want to grade Michael Bay on a curve here. That not only did he not shoot a woman in this film like grotesque or sexually, but actually wrote like a genuine female character. Like, hey man, hats off to you, Michael Bay. And also props to you as well for like including a gay character that was prominent and had like an actual big role in the movie, unlike somebody, Disney. And like, you know, it's just like he wasn't afraid to do it. He's like, yep, there he is. Like, he has a big part in this movie too. It shocked me. I honestly like left the film shocked more than like anything, because I was just like, I can't believe Michael Bay actually did something like this refreshing for me. Like this is like probably top 5 Michael Bay films for me. Like I loved it that much. I had a blast with this film. I probably am in the minority. I don't know. I talked to people who actually came out of this and went, wow, that was actually really fun and everything. I talked to people who've left this and said that was one of the worst films I've seen from him. And I'm just like, okay, it's just all over the map, it seems like. So for right now, while I try to like gather my thoughts on what the hell else I want to say about this movie, I'm going to pass it off to Don.
Okay, let me say this. Bayhem is kind of like 2 layers. There is the surface level, which is Bayhem. You know exactly what it is. It's that robot chicken sketch where it's like explosions, right? It's like that, right? Every single stereotype of Michael Bay, it's that. And it's a Bay film operating at high octane. It's a climax every scene, and it's high octane every goddamn moment. There's the secondary level to Bayhem that upsets me as someone who's a fan of film and knows that better artists, better trained artists aren't getting support for their projects. However, then I proceed to be like, whatever, dude, it is what it is. This movie's going to get made no matter what. So for me, I have fun. I now have fun. Instead of getting upset with that second layer, I now have fun with that second layer. And let me illustrate this best. The second layer of Bayhem actually comes in the exposition in the first quarter, the opening of the movie before the bank robbery begins in earnest. And I honestly can't talk about Michael Bay without talking about that the YouTube channel Every Frame of Painting, where they talk about Michael Bay, specifically Bayhem. And you know, that YouTube video I always go back to it, and it rings true in that Michael Bay treats every single shot, every single camera motion, no matter where you are in the movie, as the most important part of the movie. And it is incredible. The scene, I'm going to spoil exposition. No one cares. What the scene where it's Gyllenhaal and my goodness, Mateen II, Abdul Mateen II are talking in the garage, right? Parallax, wide sweeping motion.
Spinning around.
Gyllenhaal is back here. Gyllenhaal is here now.
That swirling camera.
And it's like, the swirling camera is the most obvious, without a doubt, for good reason. But it's also, it's like Michael Bay reminds himself, what are like the 17 different types of, dolly, zoom, and it's like, checklist, right? And it's like every single moment. And it's not like it's the scene where the ambulance is gonna make the sick jump and it's like the music stops and it's like, okay, that scene deserves something like that. Should it actually have that? That's up for debate for more conservative filmmakers. But for Michael Bay, yeah, sure, you expect that. But then he also does the exact same thing for scenes where it absolutely does not matter. And that stuff, again, it used to piss me off. It still kind of does. But now I just, sitting down with Ambulance here in 2022, I just have fun with that shit now.
Yeah.
100%. And it's like, yeah, dude. I think Michael Bay should be shown in every single film class. If you take a film class and there's an editing component to it, there's like an editing class, editing 1, editing 2, you have to show a Michael Bay film, a scene or 2 from him.
I would even argue, like, look, I'm gonna say this, like, this is one critique I have, but yeah, the cinematography, the editing, it annoyed the hell out of me up until it got into the actual ambulance, because once you get there, it's actually like condensed into this ambulance. I actually felt, and you guys can feel different about this and whatnot. I felt that his cinematography style and his editing style added more attention to the tight, claustrophobic, like bottle film of being in this ambulance. And it was just like, man, I can see that. This actually adds to the tension. Like, his style is actually working in this scenario. Now, when we ever leave the ambulance and it's just people sitting around looking at screens, surveying, like, helicopter footage, and it's just like cut here, cut here, cut here. It's like, okay, babe, like, dude, slow down. And then we get camera shots that go down a building like this and then come back up, and it's just like, what are you doing, man? Can you stop?
Yeah, those ones where they upscale a building just to go right back down.
It's the swan. It's a drone swan dive.
It is.
That's literally what it is.
Yeah, it is.
I don't even. I can't even confirm that that's what that is. I know what that is.
Yes, it's gotta be that. Yeah, I thought the same thing. It's an awesome tactic, but it goes back to
it's so obvious.
But it's like, I want before I forget, I want to say this. Like, I used to be intensely critical of Bay. For good reason, I think in some ways.
You should.
When I first started reviewing movies.
Right.
But hearing, like I said, seeing where Hollywood has gone and sort of the sameness of a lot of these superhero movies and all these movies akin to set up a universe, and even what Dom is saying too, after watching a lot of these movies, I go back to the Bob Dylan quote from his song My Back Pages. I was so much older then. I'm younger than that now. Yeah. And that's how I feel about that, is like, I can look at this as sort of like very, I think the term is vulgaratourism, but like really loud pop art sort of visual style. And I contend that some of it does really work well for this movie, but the other catch-22 of that is kind of what Dom alluded to. Bay's best and worst tendencies are on display here. And he's never found a project he couldn't, or a subject he could not over direct. He could over direct the hell out of a dolphin documentary. Like, and you see that here.
A Michael Bay documentary, now that you mentioned that.
A nature documentary.
Man, he would be, that would be a punishment for him, I think, in some ways. But, get him to direct something like Sloths, please. But like, no, it's one of those instances where, like, once the ambulance chase comes into play, the directing style fits. But it's those first 20 minutes that are like, the camera swirling between Abdul Mateen II and Gyllenhaal, and then you have just like sort of the wobbliness of the camera as well. Like the scene when he's on the phone, when Will's on the phone at the very beginning with the insurance agent, and the camera is like ceaselessly moving, and it's Christ's sake, like,
not only that, like, that scene
waste no time.
That scene is so ridiculous because the person on the other line is just telling him off and everything. He's like, please, my wife is sick. And we cut to the wife, like, holding the baby, and she's happy as ever. Her skin's glowing and everything. She's like, oh, you got the insurance? Good. Like, it's just like, what disease does your wife have, man?
Can you hold that thought, Dom, until we come back? Because I don't want to get you cut off here. We're having too much fun talking Ambulance, the new Michael Bay movie. We will be back after a brief intermission, a Zoom-sponsored intermission. Keep it locked. This is Sleepless with Steve. We are back from the Zoom-sponsored intermission. It is Sleepless with Steve, and we are talking Ambulance, the new Michael Bay movie. Dom, you had a thought. I don't want you to lose it. What's your thought?
You could say that all the camera tricks that Michael Bay was putting in the first 10 to 20 minutes of this film was just clever foreshadowing of every single camera trick he will then go on to do during the actual action scenes. man, every film critic just everyone has this individual relationship with Michael Bay, and it is fascinating to see. And in a way, in that particular lane, I respect Michael Bay, or like I'm very glad he's on the scene just for that. Artistically, you kind of have to. I don't want to say hate the guy, but like, you know, you kind of have to take issue with his work. But you know, once you get over that first phase that everyone has, I think should have, it goes in different directions. And yeah, he's a very unique figure, and I'm very glad that he's around. And in fact, literally every single movie, you know, that he has, you have to talk about him. It's like Tarantino. You can't not talk about Tarantino. It's not like, you know, in a way, Michael Bay is the film. He doesn't bleed into his work. But in any case, I guess you know, I'll transition into some positives. I think some you know, Steelman arguments here, where it's like, yes, I agree with Joe 100%. I'm going to double highlight this. He did not overtly sexualize his female lead, and she actually had an arc.
She did. She has the best arc in the film.
Yes. And it's actually fascinating. I was genuinely impressed in a way that you're impressed with a kindergartner when they learn how to, you know, ride a bike.
No, but that's exactly how I feel. It's like my like, this is Michael Bay, my little yarn Yoshi here. I'm just like, good for you. Look how much you're grown, man. Like, it's just like, when I see
you didn't put the EMT in a tank top. Look at you.
Exactly. I'm like, yeah, and you have like the hottest EMT I've ever seen in a movie. So like,
you didn't look like a chick from Nasty Nurses.
I was scared for a second because early in the movie, during the chase, there is a particular shot where Gyllenhaal is here and then her ass is like here, and I'm like, oh no. But I think that was like incidental. It was like, it's like Michael Bay is like, he just can't help but do that kind of shot at least once, like just out of habit. He just does it. I don't know. I'm just kidding. But anyway. Yeah. Another positive. Straight to the point, no bullshit. You said you know, maybe not like not like the straightest to the point, but it's like, okay, yeah, we get it. Struggling veteran, sympathy. He's the one we're gonna have sympathy. Gyllenhaal, insane guy. He's probably gonna wind up paying for the sins of everyone here, and then all the goons. And then I think like 15 to 20 minutes in, you skip the robbery entirely. Like there's like
the robbery, they're already with the worst heist crew I've ever seen in any movie, by the way.
Exactly.
That dude driving that truck was funny as hell, though. He was in your wedding.
20 minutes into this film, the shtick is in full motion. Yeah. The ambulance, like, hey, bank robbery goes wrong. They're in an ambulance, hostage situation in an ambulance, dying cop in the ambulance. That's it. That's the whole plot. There you go. And we're there.
The robbery scene is intense. It's long, but it's intense.
It's not bad. It's very condensed, right? It's like, you're not going to make Heat, but you're going to get the best parts of Heat, and you're going to try and replicate some of that.
I would even say, too, the climax here, which I thought was going to be a whole different thing, the way the film is, like, leading up to it, where it's like, man, like, you know, because, of course, the cartel gets brought into this movie, because, you know, Michael Bay just needs, like, an even more evil villain for our, like, you know, anti-heroes to face, so that way it's like, hey, it's okay when they kill somebody. Because, you know, that's the cartel, and they're super evil. I was like, okay, this is going to be, like, a crazy shootout and everything. No, actually, like, the climax of this movie is, like, a standard, like, very intense, like, hostage, like, scene where where they're holding somebody hostage, and you're just like, I actually don't know how this is going to play out. Like, I mean, I have an idea of how it's going to go, but it's like, in the moment, I was even on the edge of my seat. I'm like, for all I know, Bay could pull a 180 on me here.
It is an intense sequence. I was also going to say, too, it is California, so when the cartel gets brought in, I do like some of the details in this movie, like how two of the cartel henchmen are wearing Raiders gear. I like some of the details of this thing. I'm like, okay, it's pretty good, you know? And also the cop, too, who's, I think, turned in a really good performance, the captain, Garrett Dillahunt. I thought he turned in a really good performance. He shows up on, like, his day off in USC gear. You know? I thought he was good and they paired him with, these two aren't going to get any credit, but like Dillahunt's paired with like the more level-headed, Keir O'Donnell, who's like his partner throughout this. They have some pretty decent banter throughout this. So there are some finer little things of this movie that I think work and are honestly a kind of a pleasure to watch in so many words. And I have to reiterate again too, $40 million. If that is really the budget for this thing, it was exceptionally crafted, because that chase scene, as long as it is, as breakneck as it is, it all looks real. It all looks great. It doesn't look faux at all.
For that one interview where he was like, some of the CGI looks like shit in this movie, I'm like, dude, I don't see it. Like,
I'd like to know what he's talking about.
Because I went to go see Black Widow, and it's just like, that's like $100 million movie, and that whole climax looks pretty bad at points. This movie, I'm like, man, for the most part, it's solid, man.
I can't think of one glaring scene that I looked at and I was like, oh, that's awful. Like that's bad special effects. I'd be curious to know what are the scenes that he's not satisfied with.
Yeah.
Because this whole thing, top to bottom, really was good. And I can't get over it, too. And that's why it's funny. I saw this movie, and I cannot remember the last time this has happened. I was completely alone in the theater seeing this thing. I cannot remember the last time that happened. I saw this movie at 11 o'clock, 11:10 to be exact, 11:10 on a Saturday. And I was the only person in there, and I got there during the trailer, so I was like in the clear too. And I was disappointed by that in a way, but I could be as loud as I want, and that didn't bother me at all. But like, and I kind of was when it came time for that, like, the surgery scene. But I was watching that surgery scene and like audibly wincing to it, and I'm just thinking, man, oh man, this is where I want at least like 20 people in the theater with me.
The audience I saw with best, like, I've talked about my crappy theater experiences I've been having recently. I'm happy to say Ambulance was not one of those, and actually one of the better ones, because people responded to the movie as, like, a genuine reaction to scenes, like, oh, or oh, like stuff like that.
They were engaged.
They were engaged. It's like, hey, this adds to the film. It's not taken away from it, because the guy behind me is explaining how the Eternals connect to the comics and everything, and I turn around to tell him to shut the hell up. It's like...
The surgery scene is a scene where in another movie, there's an action movie playing within that movie, and it's like a parody, and it's like, all right, we're on a car chase, and I'm elbow deep inside a cop that's dying out while this bank robbery goes wrong, and that's like a 30-second bit, but this is just the whole movie. So it's like, hey, great, here we are. He made a whole movie out of that. Half of this budget, 75% of this budget, probably went to the cars they broke and smashed in real life, to the point
like big one at the end.
to the point where they ran out of cars to smash, and they started using CGI. There were a couple of CGI shots of cars here, and the only reason why I noticed that is because this is just car explosion, car wrecking porn. 1000%, just constantly, which is hilarious to me, because it's like, we got to save our brother cop, we got to do whatever it takes. 100 other cops are probably dead or like paralyzed.
Oh God, yeah,
from the neck down.
I thought that too. They're like, we gotta save this cop. There had to be at least 100 cops killed in this thing.
And if you are
at one point, save the rookie to save like the new guy.
At one point, just cut your losses and be like, that thing's gonna
Who
run
was
out
trying
of
to
gas
ask out the goddamn bank teller, which is part of the reason this whole thing unfolded.
Horny one gets you killed again. But anyway,
yeah, he's going to horny jail and then some. I mean, man, oh man, dude, this is what simping gets you. That should have been the tagline for this thing.
So true. That's
but
so freaking true.
Simp City, population, actor's name, Jackson White. We'll have to go into closing thoughts. We do have one more segment. We'll have to go into closing thoughts. But like, and I'm surprised we went this long without making the comparison. And I'm fully going to acknowledge that this comparison is not my own. Like, I didn't make this one. I read this one. So I'm just copying it. And I used it in my review. But I said, like, this movie does have the look and feel of when you get 5 stars in Grand Theft Auto 5 and are like, Jesus, take the wheel, man. Like, you're trying to survive as long as you possibly can, or something like that.
This is like when you die in GTA and as soon as you come out of the hospital, you say, screw it, I'm going to do it again. You take the ambulance right there in the parking lot.
You know,
That's funny. I had not thought of that at all. That's funny.
That's what it is, man. And you know what? That effect, I think, could have worked like gangbusters had this movie been shorter.
Yeah.
Like, this is a concept that makes for a great, not good, great 95 to 100, 85 to 100-minute movie.
Yeah.
Stretched out to 2 hours and 16 minutes because Bay can't make a movie that short. It's bloated and it's exhausting. And I got more exhilarating than I did exhausting, but there's certain stretches of this thing where you start to feel it, especially like this is another movie where the epilogue, I feel like, or the third act feels like it's conducted in slow ass motion. Like it just,
literally is.
Yeah, it is. It's got like that dreamlike aesthetic, that gauzy sort of aesthetic. And it like goes on and on. It's longer than a bad marriage. Like that knocks it down a couple pegs for me. Stylistically, though, I mean, stylistically, when you get to the meat of the chase, I think it all looks great. It plays really well on a big screen, which is all the more disappointing, I think, that this movie isn't making that much money.
Yeah.
And briefly too, Abdul Mateen II and Gyllenhaal, they're wacky. Like one of my buddies was trying to say, like, dude, Gyllenhaal gives such a way over the top performance. And I'm like, it fits this. I don't want him being Jared Leto and taking this way too seriously. Okay. Gyllenhaal knows what's asked of him. And that's an underrated trait of an actor, and especially Gyllenhaal. I think Gyllenhaal consistently knows what's asked of him when it comes to delivering a good performance.
If your actor can match what the director has, like, a vision, energy, whatever it may be, if that actor can match that, know what he's into, it's just a perfect pairing for someone like Bay. Like, it's honestly perfect for someone like him.
This won't end up on his highlight reel, but it's a great performance from Jake Gyllenhaal.
Yeah.
I'm not taking anything away from that, based on including what
my favorite performance in this whole movie is just the shots where he's yelling at himself in anger.
Dude, yeah.
Bug-eyed like he was a Nightcrawler, just freaking going off.
He's psychotic in this, and he's so fitting. As a whole, though, I think if you go in with the expectation that you're going to like this movie, or you're already sold on this movie, you're probably going to like it. And that's fair enough. I give it 2.5 out of 4 stars because I did mostly enjoy this thing. It's just there's certain setbacks. Again, I couldn't help but thinking, especially at like the hour and 45, 50-minute mark, somewhere around there, or even like that 2-hour mark, I couldn't help but thinking, like, man, I'd give this maybe 3.5 stars if this thing wrapped up about 45 minutes quicker than it ultimately did. It's 2.5 out of 4 stars from me. But it's a fun movie, and I wish that it was doing better in theaters. We'll go to Joe, and then Dom, you can end it.
I'll piggyback off the whole thing about it being shorter. I did say this was perfectly paced, and I still will hold it to that. But to me, it's the same way I felt about the Batman, where it is a perfectly paced movie for its runtime. But I do feel like it could still be short. There are parts of the movie I feel like we could cut out entirely and make this shorter and make it even a better movie because of that, because it's just tighter. And, it's just a shorter film. There's nothing wrong with that. I don't know why people nowadays have such a problem with seeing a movie under 2 hours. Thank you, Pete Davidson, for the category on Netflix, by the way. Anyways, Ambulance is a ton of fun. It is its own self-contained story. It is nothing to do with a sequel coming up, a prequel in the works, nothing like that. We're not going to get a Jake Gyllenhaal, Abdul Mateen prequel showing their dad. I hope to God we don't get that. I want this to be its own self-contained story. We don't get a lot of movies like this anymore. It was cool to see something like this again, because for God's sakes, this franchise, like, as much as I love it and hold it dear to my heart, this latest installment, F9, was... I look at this film, it's like, man, that's what I wanted you to be. Instead, you're 2 hours and 40 minutes of just some of the most, dumbest decisions I've seen in the franchise, other than going to space. That's right, going to space wasn't the dumbest decision I've seen in that franchise. This is just much more boiled down. It knows what it needs to do. It knows what it wants to be. It doesn't waste time. It plays it out, and it's very intense. It has the right actors for it to play something out like this. And I had a ton of fun. Bay, dude, good job. On Letterboxd, I gave this 5 stars because that's just my, kind of jokingly, review thing that I do sometimes. If I love a movie that much, like even though if it's not really that good, I'll give it like 5 stars. I do that with bad movies all the time as well, like Samurai Cop or The Room.
God, you're the people I hate on that site.
But no, I always put in the review too. It's like, for real though, this is actually like a 3, maybe 3.5 on Letterboxd. For me, on the Sleepless scale, it is a 3-star movie. It is fun. It is something I think people should go see when, you know, you're saying you're tired of the superhero genre. You just want something, just an action film to fulfill something. You don't want to be connected to anything. No, this is your calling. Like, this is the film you guys have been asking for, you action junkies out there that don't want it connected to superheroes or anything like that. There you go.
Dom, send us home.
It's funny how you guys are saying that, yeah, this is a self-contained, this is the same director that made like 7.5 Transformers. Yeah, exactly. So whatever, but I mean, you're right. I do agree with that, but Michael Bay is America's director, and that's not us like saying, yeah, that's more him forcing his movies into and us buying it up. Don't get me wrong. But the guy's a tour de force, which is unfortunate for a lot of reasons. But you know what? At the end of the day, he is the director and I hope he recognizes, I think he does, that he is the director that artistically, we know all of his flaws because we can't ignore them. Because we feel them, even people who don't know anything about film, they feel them at a visceral level, those flaws, and somehow he's turned those flaws into the selling point, and that is an accomplishment in and of itself. That's something Tommy Wiseau can't do in his other films. Like really, he keeps trying to recreate the room, joke of the room. He can't do it. He can't do it. And other directors who have a shtick that worked for them once, they can't do it. Michael Bay can do that almost every single, or at least 80% of the time he can do it, and that's really impressive. For this movie, I'm just going to be contrarian. 2 out of 4 stars, and you know what? It just because I had so much fun talking about it, I'll give it that.
All over the map,
which is what it which honestly it is what it deserves. This is one of those reviews, I'm not going to lie, where your guys' reviews, your stars will influence my stars just for the hell of it. So yeah, he is a phenomenon, and in the pantheon of filmmaking, hey man, you got one life to live. What better? What an honor! Just like how Gilbert Gottfried is his own unique thing, so was Michael Bay, and to be that is awesome.
We will move forward. Won't take a ton of time on this topic, but I feel like in some ways this topic now that we're segueing to has been a little bit underreported. Dom's mainly going to take the wheel on this one. I think you got something that you want to start with this as well, or at least include. So I might as well just turn over the wheel to you. And I also talk the most on this damn show, so it's a good way to prevent voice fatigue. But I was gobsmacked by this, and I haven't read as much as I probably should on it, but I was gobsmacked when I saw it, because apparently HBO Max and Discovery Plus are looking to be combined into one platform. That's the headline of Variety. Now, what you may be thinking off of that note is that HBO Max, Warner Media, is going to acquire Discovery. That's the opposite of what's happening. Discovery is acquiring Warner Media. And I sent the article to these gentlemen, and I said, where the hell did Discovery get all this money? Like, I don't know a single person outside of my 83-year-old grandmother who has Discovery Plus. That's number one. Number two, I usually with these deals, you hear rumblings, you hear like sort of like, leaks and news and whatnot about these things. I hadn't heard anything about this. Warner Media is a massive company too. And together, when it comes to platform demand shares for streaming video on demand, HBO and Discovery together are going to take up roughly the the math checks out about 19%. By comparison, Hulu takes up 19.8% of the pie, Netflix second with 18.7%. Because also I think they factor into that, like, Hulu and like ESPN, like that sort of ordeal too. I think that's how they factor it. But this is going to be an even larger slice of the pie as well. And I think that this is going to be a really, really kind of an interesting development. And also, too, with the Discovery merger with Warner Media, I'll throw this out there. The HBO Max chief, Andy Forssell, he's leaving Warner Media after this acquisition, too. And he's been with HBO Max. I think he's been with HBO even before HBO Max was even a thing, back when it was going and now. But he was one of the guys who was tasked with, like, rolling out HBO Max and sort of, you know what I mean, the direction that this streamer was going to take. He's out after this acquisition. I'm throwing it over to Dom, though, for more contextualization. Whenever a topic that's very layered and dense comes up, I don't want to do too much thinking, so I have Dom educate me. So, Dom, enlighten me.
Thank you. No, wow, I really appreciate that.
I'm honest. Quick, that wasn't a joking lead in either.
No, I know. Thank you. No, quick numbers from Wikipedia. These are like soft numbers, service level numbers. Warner Media operating revenue revenue for 2020 was $30 billion. That sounds right. Warner, right? Discovery, $10 billion. It's obviously under that $30 billion, but just the fact that Discovery Inc. had, like, when you think Discovery, you think, oh, the Discovery Channel, Mythbusters. That's it. No, dude. Joe, can you cut to this table here?
Yes, on the Wikipedia page.
Yes, dude. I believe it's ordered by households, viewership by millions. Dude, Discovery Channel, Food Network, HGTV, The Learning Channel, ironically called TLC, Animal Planet, Travel Channel, Oprah Winfrey, Chicago's own Oprah Winfrey, is not even the highest part of that chart. And to quote the Boondocks, bitches love Oprah.
It's a number one show, stay-at-home moms I have on while they vacuum.
I joke, but I grew up watching Oprah, so kudos to her. She's a tour de force. Yeah, dude. And from there, you get a little more, maybe not as well known, but that top half of that chart is huge in terms of, like, just what you think as television, right? And it's one of those things. It's like Viacom. For us, we know what that means, but for people who don't know what that is, look up Viacom. Probably look up Google Images and see, like, Viacom table or Viacom properties. I was like, oh yeah, that is both MTV and Rugrats. Cool. Okay. Right. I think, right. Did I get that right? Anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like, okay. Yeah. So when these two merge together, when Discovery and Warner are now merged together, it's incredible how that Wikipedia article is now for Discovery Inc. was now. This is officially this broke, and now they will forever be known. Well, not forever, but from now on, they are known as oh my God, Warner Brothers Discovery. That is the full name, and it's you remember that joke in South Park, the latest COVID one, where it's like all these things are merging together plus, or it's like that.
What is it, Applebee's, Denny's Plus or something like
exactly.
that? Yeah,
and it's like, hey, South Park got it right again. That's literally what is happening here. That is how capitalism works. It's all joining together into one big, or just a handful of things. But anyway, looking at this Verge article, which is pretty damn good. Steve really got the gist of it, but really what both teams are looking at here, this is the same old story we've been seeing since Sleepless with Steve came back on the air, which is that this is the streaming wars continue. This is another major bookmark that however many years from now, when you see that timeline of major mergers, this will definitely be one of them. And it keeps on happening. I think something to note is that as it keeps happening, the rate of which increases, the amount of public awareness of those things decreases, because there was that other big merger. Was it that happened like a half a year ago or something? I've already forgotten. See, but it's like there was some good grumblings about that, but this completely stealth, probably because of the Will Smith Oscars slap or whatever. But like this one is completely flying under the radar for something that is now what $50 billion in worth. I don't really know the number of that, but it is a big freaking deal. Joe, can you go to that Verge article, Control F the word critically, and go to this paragraph here, which I think just highlights the dichotomy of both. Quote, at the same time, both companies specialize in two content businesses that seem, at least with respect to their studio legacies, at odds. HBO is renowned for critically acclaimed series like Euphoria and Watchmen. Discovery, meanwhile, is best known for its unscripted content. Think Ghost Hunting and 90 Day Fiancé. And that paragraph really just summarizes the how insane this is, to at least from a cultural aspect. From a business standpoint, perfect sense, or at least for the rich sons of bitches in charge. But culturally, it's crazy, dude. This is like Thornton's and McDonald's getting together and being like, hey, yeah, let's put Thornton gas stations in front of every single right. Is that the right one? In front of every highway McDonald's, and here we are. So if you're not seeing it now, if you haven't been seeing it for the past X years, we are streaming is, once again, we'll say it one more time on this show, streaming is not quite the fully liberating thing. It is in many ways a liberating thing for us and how we consume it, but in terms of how the business is done, not a damn thing. The game stays exactly the same, baby. And here's another case of that.
Naked, afraid, and rich as shit. That is the motto of this new deal right here. Joe, any final words for this? Any opinions and stuff? I guess we'll see, because the integration seems to kind of still be TBD.
Right.
It kind of still seems to be like TBD how it's going to look. But I mean, if nothing else, I don't watch Discovery, if I haven't made that already abundantly clear by my lack of knowledge of how powerful they are. Like, I haven't watched a lot of Discovery personally, but I know obviously a lot of people like it. They don't get rich by not being successful. It just goes to show, though, that I still contend that HBO Max is the best streaming service out there. Yeah. Does this bolster this in your mind, Joe? Like, how you view this overall? Send us home with your thoughts.
I'm sorry, real quick. What do you mean by best? Define best in like what way?
I think HBO Max is probably the most diverse content catalog there. Okay, because when I look at it, you have everything HBO, which is already huge on the Richter scale of success in that. You have Cartoon Network and Adult Swim on there as well. But more, so you have the entertainment facets that contributes to both adult and, youth animation. Yes, TLC.
I mean TMC.
TMC.
Yeah.
TCM.
Jesus Christ.
Jesus Christ, the alphabet soup. Yes, that's what I keep trying to say. The last point I was going to make is that HBO Max, too, is one of the few streaming services. Paramount's done this a little bit, too. But TCM is part of HBO Max, and it's one of the few streaming services where you can actually get classic movies on there as well. Good luck finding anything older than like 80 on Netflix and Hulu. Like, good luck. So I think there's a preservation aspect. There's an accessibility aspect with HBO Max, too, that makes it better. And I also think the last thing I'll point is I think it also has probably the smoothest, most attractive interface.
Yes.
Of all the streaming apps that are on your TV. I've used it on my laptop and I've used it on TV. It's worked extremely well. It's clean. It's well presented. That's why I tell people, if you only can afford one streaming service, I'd go HBO Max.
I agree. I agree with the whole idea that HBO Max is the best one out of all the streaming services. Like a lot of people are like, but it's $15. I'm like, yeah, but no offense, even though Disney Plus, which they will argue with me that it's $8, it's very bare bones content on there, because here's the thing, we've all seen the Disney stuff growing up, so it's not like, oh man, I'm gonna get Disney Plus and I'm gonna binge all the Marvel movies for the 5th time. It's like, I'd rather go watch something that's like classic, stuff they haven't seen in a while, because HBO Max has that. They have something classic on there, stuff I haven't seen in a while, or it just has that diverse catalog, as Steve was saying, and I think this will add to it. I mean, I'll tell you right now, HBO Max has like literally like shows like stuff from the Food Network, 90 Day Fiancé and stuff like that. hell yeah, that's perfect background, like TV shows to throw on and everything. Now I have that part of the catalog as well as background noise, which will be all the Discovery stuff. I think it's cool to see something like that. Again, it's more companies are merging, more companies are acquiring one another. I'm questioning how much did Justice League really like mess up Warner Bros. In terms of like a financial failure that Discovery was like,
that's a good
we
point.
Can make our move.
Great point.
That's a good point. Yeah, my mind didn't even go 20 paces from that.
The only reason why I thought about that is because while researching about this and everything after you sent it, Steve, like, because I've been liking the Batman on Twitter with all the memes and everything, I've been seeing a lot of Snyder fans being like, they're doing it. Discovery is acquiring Warner Media to restore the Snyderverse. I'm just like, what is happening?
That call, that's another reason why I've warmed up to Michael Bay, is because the Michael Bay stans are not half as insufferable as Zack Snyder fans.
Oh,
Swear to God.
You know what it is? Yeah. It's that meme of like that guy like crying. It's like, no, Zack Snyder's really an artist and everything. And it's like the two Chads looking at each other like, this Michael Bay film is shit. Yes. Yeah. So, no, I mean, I think it's cool. We're getting more with HBO Max. Honestly, out of all the acquisitions we've gotten that we've covered, this is the strangest and most unique one of them all. I'll say that. So, yeah.
For sure.
I don't have much to add to that. Dom basically covered everything.
90 Day Fiancé and Harvey Birdman, Attorney at Law, are now under the same banner. We have reached praxis.
An American Pickle by Seth Rogen is still streaming, too. Talk about the movie nobody talks about. Pissed me off. That movie entered my mind this weekend for some reason. I was just like, that was a great movie that nobody saw. That's what Steve thinks about when he cleans his apartment on a Sunday. I was like, American Pickle was a damn good movie. Nobody saw it. That's our show this week, and what a show it was. Next week, I am really upset because we are sans Dom. We are sans Dom next week. So we will not have our Zoom-sponsored intermissions, at least, but that is not at all a worthy price for the absence of one of the three legs of the tripod over here. So he will be back the following week. You're coming back in time for Apollo 10.5, right?
Yes.
Indeed. We got Everything Everywhere all at once next week. Technically, I'm seeing it this weekend. We will dive into that. I cannot wait to watch that movie. One of the most, if not the most, critically acclaimed movie of the year. With Michelle Yeoh, directed by the Daniels. We'll dive into that. I'm sure Joe and I are going to have a lot to say about that. Yeah. That's our show. Highlights will be posted on the very same YouTube channel that you are watching. They're also available over at stevepulaski.com. You can check out all my written reviews over there as well. Stay safe, stay healthy. We'll be back next Wednesday, same time, same place, 6:30 Central on Sleepless with Steve.